earth sign readings for this week. The cards that I will be using today, I keep inside. This is one of those Ipsy pouches. Oh, hi Kayla's lovely. I am in fact feeling a lot better today. My allergies are not completely gone, but I've kind of settled into the medicine routine that will help me keep them under control. Thank you. Thank you for your well wishes. These cards are called the Eternal Tarot. It is an Egyptian-themed deck, and it is very similar to the Egyptius Kier deck, which is the first deck that I ever had. It is the deck on which I learned how to read, and it is a suitless deck. So what that means is, I have tons of tips. So I will go over that in a minute, actually. And maybe I could do a whole video on it. But this is what the booklet looks like. I think I bought this on Amazon not too long ago. The Suitless Tarot deck does not have the minor arcana broken up into suits the way that a playing card deck would be. I am also going to be using this copy of Sun Tzu's The Art of War for biblio or stitchomancy. Biblio. And then finally, when I go over to the members side of the channel, I am going to be using this piece of black obsidian for the crystal scrying. So now by popular request, I am going to give you guys some allergy tips before we get into the divination. So, I use two different medicines, or two different primary medicines. I use Benadryl at night, and I never take more than 2 tablets, because diphenhydramine is they call it like a dirty drug in that it has a lot of side effects. The primary one, which is to make you very sleepy, right? The second medicine that I take is, the trade name is Zyrtec, but I think it's also called cetirizine. So then, Claritin is loratadine and Zyrtec is cetirizine. And I don't know if there's really too much of a difference between Zyrtec and Claritin effect-wise. Some people get very sleepy when they take those as well, but I'll take 1 tablet during the day, and if I absolutely need to, and this is against the manufacturer recommendations, I will take 2. Sometimes I will take a half of a tablet, and that will be enough. I also, everybody knows what this is now. I will wear a mask with a filter inside, and especially like the N95 masks are supposed to keep out all small particulates like pollen, and it makes a huge difference. I will sleep with a mask on. Then I also use pseudoephedrine as a decongestant, and of course you have to give them your ID because because it can be used to manufacture illegal drugs. And I use Flonase. And you can use a steamer to kind of open up those passages. I've used a neti pot before when it gets very, very bad. But I take the Benadryl at night, I take the Zyrtec in the morning, and even if I'm not feeling particularly sick, I will take medicine to mitigate potential symptoms if I know that pollen levels are still high. I think I've mentioned before that when I lived on the East Coast, I grew up in Atlanta, and I lived there for a lot of my life, and it's a very green city, which is awesome. That's amazing, and I'm happy for them. But one of the side effects of that for me was that I was horribly, horribly sick for 6 months out of the year. So now that I live in a much more Mediterranean type climate, I only have allergies for very short windows at a time, and I'm able to actually live some kind of a decent existence. So if I end up leaving LA, which I don't really have plans to right now, but you never know what could happen, I would have to move somewhere that was much drier. I can't move to another place that has a lot of trees and plants. So that concludes the allergy mitigation segment of the tarot readings this week for the earth signs. We're going to get into purifying the space, and then I'm going to start. Oh, that's very interesting. The essential oils can help, but and I have taken bee pollen before too, and it's kind of like cumulative over time. The essential oils can help to like open up the nasal passages, but I found that my allergies are really, really severe, so I do have to take like medicine for it, and I have thought about doing allergy shots, but I don't want to jack up my immune system like that. But I will look into biomagnetism. I would like to know more about that, definitely. So thank you for the suggestion. And I do have some nasal spray actually that has like clove oil in it, and I have used that before. I'm going to take a little bit of this natron. Oh yes, I don't have any pets. And I do have a large assortment of essential oils, because of my practice, of course. And we're just going to sprinkle this all around. And now I'm going to shuffle the cards and start with the earth sign of Taurus. I think I neglected to say that. And thank you for your recommendations. Oh, jeez. Taurus, we have a jumper for you. So I'll make sure that I write down the timestamp. But the offering card jumped out of the deck for you, Taurus. And I'm going to put it back because I'm not done shuffling yet. But I like to show the jumpers. And the offering card is about how the process of giving opens up things for you also. So you could be offering something to somebody at this time, and it could be very important for them. Okay. Oh, very interesting, very interesting. All right. All right, so let me write down the timestamp. Taurus, we have a lot of reversals in your reading today. That's not bad. But what it tells me is that things could be a little bit unclear for you at this time. There could be a lot of different options open to you. We only have, additionally, one major arcana in your reading today. We do have enough upright cards that I'm not inclined to read all of them as uprights. If they were all reversed, then I would just flip the reading over, right? But let's start here in the past. So we have this regeneration card coming out for you in the past. And we have the pharaoh here taking part in the Osirian mysteries. So the Jed column is a representation of the backbone of Osiris. It has to do with fertility and how even after death he was able to impregnate Isis and have a child, and the cyclical nature of the growing season. So there's also like sprouting corn mummies is another thing that's done around this time. It is the month of Kiach or Kaharka. And in the modern Coptic calendar, it is around Christmas time. So tying in the Osirian mythology and stories, rather, with the Jesus mythology. We have this singular sheaf of wheat down at the bottom, and green is a fertile color. So associated with these growing cycles and the regeneration that comes with them. Now, this card is showing up in the reverse. So this could have to do with a time in the past when you were preparing the fields for the growing season, so to speak. This wouldn't just necessarily be agriculturally speaking or having to do with your garden, but could also have to do with long-term projects. It could be starting a new job. So all of these things. We do have the masculine planet of Mars here. So very action-oriented, very much about new beginnings. And this card also would have overtones of masculine fertility to it as well. But I say masculine in this sense because of the way that reproduction works, but it would be like an active fertility, whereas the parturition and the gestation is more like passive fertility, to put it in less gendered terms. Here in the current situation, we have some very interesting cards considering how the offering card had popped out. Now, the offering card did not reappear in your reading, but the implication of the offering card being that what you offer to someone is of greater importance than their receiving it. And here we have the avarice card coming out in the place of the significator. So this is very interesting because this card is all about coming from a place of scarcity, even when that scarcity doesn't exist, right? We have, this can be considered kind of a water sign card in some ways because we have all of these jugs. They could have beer or wine or honey in them. This is a Saturnian card, so it could also be similar to pentacles. We have some pentacles, as a matter of fact, up here on the shelf. So this could be very similar to the Five of Pentacles. It could be very similar also to Eight of Cups energy. Now we only have 7 of these containers. But the Eight of Cups being like walking away because something is insufficient, right? Even though we have this abundance here. Now, there really isn't any lack depicted on this card, but we do have this guy carefully tallying everything and kind of perpetuating this feeling of lack. Saturn is a very slow-moving energy. So where it comes to one's resources, if you are in a Saturnian energy, it's very established energy, but again, it's moving very slowly. And so you're not going to see like a big payoff, and there might be some feelings of insecurity associated with that. Crossing this card, we have the Passion card, which is number 15, would be very similar to the Devil. And here we have Leo and Neptunian energy. So Neptune in Leo is things being a little too open with possibility where passions are concerned, where your creativity is concerned. And possibly things being a little too abstract in the presence of children as well with Neptune and Leo. So I believe this to be Benebjejet from the underworld, who wasn't a particularly evil person. I'm not super familiar with this entity, and so I'm not going to speak too much on this at this time. But he is holding a was scepter here, which indicates power. And we do have this guardian cobra here. The cobras are always guardians and can be associated with Wadjet or called the Uraeus. And sometimes if there were 2, they were associated with Isis and Nephthys. And there was also a goddess named Renenutet, who was a guardian spirit, and who also is a good person to appeal to for financial help. But I might go more into that at a different time. The Passion card here, that things might be a little too abstract to really pin them down. Oh, thank you for coming, Sid. It's good to see you. So, very much also like these, like with avarice, where we're having this feeling of lack. Sometimes there are things that control us, like would be depicted with the Devil card, that we may or may not have that much control over. Things like illness can be under the Devil card. Things like our baser instincts, which people often have a hard time controlling. and certainly through no fault of their own. I think a lot of times it's due to environmental factors that people just haven't worked through, and you can't do that for another person. And you can't expect people to be further along than they are. I think most people genuinely are trying their best. But this card showing up crossing the significator kind of indicates to me that there might be too much lack of clarity, and that is what is kind of driving this feeling of lack. And because that offering card came out, there might be aspects to this as well where your offering of something means that much more because of where you're coming from with it. So now we're going to look down here in the MMCLI. And the readings, I do have to warn you ahead of time, have been running pretty long this week. So I've been changing the battery out after the second sign and then before the third sign. So I'll indicate that in the timestamps, of course, and give you lots of warning. But this is the foundations of everything that you're going to be dealing with in the midheaven, where you see the goal or destiny. And this is another major arcana card. This is number 22 in this deck, which equates to the world. And here, instead of the 4 fixed signs, we have the 4 sons of Horus, who guarded the canopic jars and were very important in the funerary practices. There was a lot of overlap between life and death in Egypt. And a lot of the theology focuses on that journey of the afterlife and of these cycles of life in general. We have 4 lotuses or maybe papyrus here. We have this person playing the harp, and it is imagined that the tunes played on this harp are what drive the action of the world. The music that the physical plane is composed of, that the connection between the ethereal and the physical is kind of bridged by the vibration of the air created by music. This card is Venus in the sign of Pisces. So it's a little bit similar to this, right? Still dealing with kind of like abstractions. But with Venus, we have romance. We also have finance. So opening up new possibilities where your finances are concerned, such that finances would not be a finite resource. Venus is a little bit also like Jupiterian energy when it comes to money. And so Jupiter being one of the archaic rulers of the sign of Pisces, Venus and Jupiter energies tend to play pretty well together. But this card is showing up in the reverse here. And part of what might be going on is needing to bring something to a close, needing to tap into a resource that you might not be remembering properly at this time, or that you might feel is outside of your grasp. But the card showing up in the reverse here also shows that the potential is there for this to be an untapped resource that is available to you. Here in the place of your hopes, no, this is your perspective. Sorry, I'm still a little foggy brained. I hope that you will forgive me. Down here in your perspective, we have cooperation, and it's showing up reversed. Okay, so now all the pieces are starting to fall into place, right? Here we have Neptune, and in this case, it can mean communion with the higher power, because if you see, these two figures are working on a column, which would either have gone it would have gone into a public building, and that building would have been a religious center, whether it was the temple or whether it was the palace, because, of course, the pharaoh was the living representation of the gods on earth. And then the temples were where a lot of different things would be taking place. Education, sometimes medicine. It was a very sacred space that had many purposes. So these two builders are getting in touch with that, this Neptunian energy, and they're doing it together. We see the partnership between them. Now, this card showing up in the reverse in the current situation tells us a lot about what we were seeing here in the place of the significator and the fact that the offering card came out. I think what you might be required to offer at this time is your energy, your labor into something. And either you are not yet willing to do that, or you might feel like you've been shut out of a cooperative situation. Or it might be that you are the one who needs to take the first step forward with that. So now here, from an outside person's perspective, we have imagination. Now, in the other deck that I have that's very similar to this one, this card is actually called Delusion. And if you look, we have the set animal down here. It's uncertain as to whether this was a real animal or whether it was more like a cryptid, but it represented the god Seth, and very harsh entity was given simultaneously the role of a protector on Ray's bark in the sky and the villain in the story of his brother's murder. We have this dancer here. Her movements are clumsy and uncoordinated, though, and it looks as though she might be intoxicated. And in fact, we have this symbol here for Hathor, which is a sistrum, which was a type of percussion instrument. And one of Hathor's big festivals was celebrating drunkenness. And again, we have this Neptunian energy coming out. So the Neptunian energies are a very double-edged sword. There's the communion with the higher power, and then there's also the abstractness and the tendency for things to kind of dither out into almost the void, right? So people observing you from the outside might perceive that while you have a lot of creativity, that you might be harnessing it in ways that are not productive. But that's an outside perspective. I don't think that's the totality of the issue. The totality of the issue would be this, and trying to tap into what is really going to bring those abstract aspects that we see with that Pisces 12th house energy into the concrete. Venus, of course, being associated with earth and air signs, symbolizing bringing ideologies down into the concrete, especially when it comes to finance. Sorry, moving around a little bit. So here in the future, we have the Magnificence card. And this card is Mercury energy. There is a lot of communication in this card. These two figures are pretty much equals. They are peers. They're having a nice brunch together. We do have the representation of, I think that is Mescaret. Basically, this foreleg or back leg of a bull represents half of the deacons, and then the other half were represented by other things. The deacons are similar to our astrological signs. They were the way that the year was measured. Each deacon was like 10 days. It was about a week on their calendar. Where we have this in the future, this is bringing in the possibility, right, for this. But it's reversed, so the potential is there. And again, it's really going to depend on how you're able to tap into the resources that you have currently, as to how that will be able to manifest in the future, in the reverse. The potential's there, but it's still waiting on some extra factors to unfold. Here in the hopes and fears. We have pilgrimage, and it's reversed. Now, this is a lunar card. So, as I've talked about in readings before, that the moon is like the lower octave of the planet Neptune's energy. And this person, it looks like they are probably royalty because of the headdress and most of how they're dressed. But then also the leopard skin would have been particular to the priesthood. So this would be a royal person in their religious role as opposed to strictly their statehood role. There's a lot of mobility to this card. We have a bark up here, and we have the implication, beg your pardon, that this particular person might be traveling to go to a religious center for purposes of worship, depending on what particular deity they are revering. It could be Amun-Ra. There was a lot of ceremony surrounding the temple of Amun-Ra. All of the temples, of course, but the temple of Amun-Ra had to be the most pure. So the most level of ceremony. And that is, I think, the reason why now Amun-Ra appears to goetic practitioners as a Maimon because of all the pomp and circumstance surrounding those rituals as well. Now, this card showing up in the reverse, you might be afraid that when you need to act, that you will be unable because the resources won't be available, perhaps. Royalty could pretty much go and do whatever it was that they felt like. And especially when it comes to religious ceremony. This might even have to do with a relationship that you have not with people here on the physical plane, but with entities that you worship, that you feel like you're not able to show them proper devotion for whatever reason. And that is not something you should worry about too much. Whatever you are able to offer devotion-wise, the entity will come to you, that that will be a right fit, that will be a good fit. I know some people also are in situations where the living situation is not conducive to such things. But spirituality will find a way. Here in the midheaven, we do have affinity. So this is going to be the result of however this resolves with the Earth in the reverse, or the World card in the reverse. Affinity, we have the sign of Mercury here. We do have Hathor depicted here at the top of the card. And we have a person with a beautiful flower here, enjoying that beautiful flower. Now, this person is solitary. So there is attraction there, and it's attraction to beautiful things. And there are, of course, elements of this that are tied up in this, right? But the focus in this case being more on the end goal and not on the perceived obstacles that might stand in one's way. So what I would invite you to do with this card, because it's in the reverse and it's in the midheaven, you might not have fully fleshed out what it is that you truly desire, what it is that you are attracted to. And this is not just romantically. Mercury is not a particularly romantic energy. It's more about mobility. It's more about communication. So whatever those things are, you will be drawn naturally to that. But you need to not exactly ignore, but kind of push these things out. And I think the key is really how that offering card popped out, that there's something that you need to be offering unto others, a resource of some kind that you may not feel like you have an abundance of, but that you are still able to offer to others. Now, the final outcome for your reading, we will be clarifying with the art of war. So I won't clarify this with cards, but it will get clarified. I don't like ending on cards like this, the unexpected, right? Here, we have this deity whose head is turned around backwards. So looking back more than they're looking forward, but also looking in the same direction as the arrow. And unknowing that this scorpion is underfoot. This also is Martian energy, though. So what one could take away from this is a need to act. We see that he has his arrow drawn. So reinforcement of taking that action, even if you don't understand the full circumstance surrounding these things. So definitely for you today, Taurus, reading about getting out of your comfort zone. So let's go now to the art of war and see if I can get any more information for you. Yes. Okay. If the enemy's troops march up angrily and remain facing ours for a long time without either joining battle or taking themselves off again, the situation is one that demands great vigilance and circumspection. So, any of us who have had frenemies knows exactly what is being talked about here. That the more you are around that person, the more that you are interacting with that hostile situation, even if no shots are fired, there is energy being expended there. So that actually does shed a lot of light, Taurus, on some possible meanings of your reading today. Especially, we did have, the devil showing up, and things being unclear, and lots of Neptunian energy here. So remember, that is not just higher power, but also things being very nebulous, right? So that is where I'm going to leave your reading for this week, Taurus. And if you are interested, oh, Daniel, thank you so much for stopping by. It's really good to hear from you. And thank you for the advice about essential oils. It's not a cure-all, but essential oils do have a lot of very beneficial therapeutic use. And it can help to kind of bolster any other treatments that you're doing. So I'm going to go after this video is over and do some crystal scrying over on the member side of the channel with this piece of black obsidian. If that interests you, you are cordially invited. But your presence is appreciated here on the channel in whatever form it takes. So now I'm going to turn these cards over and we will move on to the sign of Virgo. And Virgo, if you would like, just kind of relax. And you can take some deep breaths if you want. Or close your eyes if you like. And allow any thoughts that you'd like to have clarified in the reading to rise up to the front of your mind. And just wait there patiently. If this is something you find stressful, I do invite you to gently breathe through that energy. Inhale the divine white light of Source. And as you exhale, just release all of that tension and discomfort. It will be returned to Source, and it will be transmuted. Okay, there we go. Interesting. So the death card did fall out. It was the next one on top of the deck, but it kind of slipped out of my hand. So I do see big changes afoot. And of course, write down the timestamp. So Virgo, let's look here at the past for you. We have the no, I keep saying that. We'll get there. We have the communion card here. Now this is a Mars energy card. This would be a very active form of fertility, an active fertilization. We have a thurible down here at the bottom. We have two different types of incense being combined in this thurible. So the white and the red represents the upper and lower Egypt, and the two halves of the Nile as well. We also see this motif repeated in the bouquet that this individual is holding. And these figures, they might be having a portrait made, but you could also imagine that they might be getting married. So this act of communion, this would be the act of fertilization occurring in the present. So could represent marriage, could represent probably not conception strictly, but perhaps the consummation of a marriage that could result in pregnancy. This could also, for those of you who are here for career and job reading, this could be entering a business partnership of some kind. Could be with another person, or it could be with a corporate entity. Now, in this particular circumstance, we see that these figures are very equal in size. So they would be on a similar societal standing. One of them is not larger than the other, showing that hierarchy in place. This could also be about an alchemizing process that you have been through, especially if there is calcination or heat or fire elemental energy involved in that. So here in the current situation, the place of the significator, we have the learning card, and it's coming out in the reverse. We have a jackal-headed god up here. This could be Anubis, could be one of the sons of Horus, could be Wet, the opener of ways. And we have a young person being tutored by an older adult. They are both wearing the Ankh, the symbol of life. And we see this moon cycle down here, showing the cycle of learning, especially in oral traditions being passed down. And this card is showing up in the reverse. And when it does that, I would take the meaning of this to be those who do not learn their history are destined to repeat it. You're having to reinvent the wheel when it comes to something in particular. This is lunar energy too. So again, there's something very cyclical going on, and there could be a lesson that needs to be learned that you're going through another cycle, another iteration of this, and haven't learned this lesson yet. Now, excuse me, I certainly don't say that to be victim blaming in any way. Again, this is one of those cards that not everybody catches it on the first pass. And so it's just important, especially at times like these, to be very gentle with oneself. There is a decision to be made. So we have the Lover's card here. This is Venus in one of its native signs, which is Taurus. Venus in Taurus, while it does have to do with affection, comfort, the home, also has to do with how Taurus is focused on financial stability. So there could be aspects of financial stability here. Both of these women seem to be of a similar socioeconomic status, but maybe one of the women is a concubine at the palace, and maybe the other woman is from a very wealthy family. And by marrying this woman, you could end up set up for life. And then if you are messing around with this woman, you have the potential to be taken to court or worse. So this card has to do possibly with your stability in your life right now. And you might be at a particular crossroads, Virgo, where that's concerned. Now, down in the MMC lie, this is the truth of the current situation. And this is what is going to set you up for what will be occurring in the midheaven. And we have the death card, which in this deck is called immortality. So when I was saying communion was immortality, I was slipping up and thinking about this card very strongly, as a matter of fact. This is Mercury in Gemini energy in this deck, instead of the Scorpionic energy we typically associate with the death card. And Mercury in Gemini, we're looking at a lot of third house energy, where we have travel, short distance travel, we have relationships to siblings, we have communication, things like that coming through. And how all of those things drive perpetuity of routines. So part of the afterlife was that each person was allotted their own plot of land in the afterlife. And here we see this person happily working in their fields, threshing this wheat, which again, we're going back to that cycle we were talking about. This card from the Taurus reading. There's a lot of agricultural themes running throughout the theology of the ancient Egyptians. And of course, this card would have to do with milestones in one's life, buying a house, obtaining property, all of these things, and how to carry that into perpetuity. So a little more complex even than what we think of with the death card, that the death card is simply this transformation and change. The immortality card is about one's legacy, so setting up one's legacy, and has a few elements that you might consider to be like 10 of Pentacles type energy involved in that then also. So from your perspective, Virgo, we have the Magician, another very strong major arcana card coming out for you in your reading. And we do see the 4 suits of the typical tarot laid out here. We have the Ach bird under the table, which was associated with the idea of eternity and also with the horizon. This is Sun in Leo energy, so a very solar energy to this card, very associated with tapping into the power of the sun god Re himself. We have a very powerful magician here, probably at least a prince, if not a pharaoh. And this is very much about manifestation, being able to draw down the power of the sun and manifest it here in the physical plane. From an outside person's perspective, Virgo, we have a card very similar to the Hermit. Now, we don't have the Hermit coming out here, but we do have this card of solitude. This could be taking place in the Duat. It is taking place at night. We see that the sun is in the afterlife. And this symbol does represent the Duat, so a time when the sun would be out of the sky. This is a Neptunian energy. So this figure is solitary here on the card, but is not alone strictly because they are in communion with the higher power. And people see that about you at this time.
They may not recognize the manifestation aspects of this, but they recognize that you are in touch with the divine at this time. And that is going to be what brings about this transformation. Here in the future, we do have another major arcana card, another Taurus card. So, fellow earth sign of Taurus being strongly represented in your reading today, Virgo. And this would be the moon in Taurus this time. This card is called the Apostolate, but of course we recognize this as the hanged man, hanging between the two worlds. Apostasy is considered not adhering to the tenets of a particular religious practice. And so kind of reinventing for oneself in a heretical way. And so this figure is having to make a sacrifice. We have these coins falling out of their hands. We have them hanging from what looks a little bit like the Wheel of Fortune. And that we also have, so on top of the Wheel of Fortune is the White Sphinx. And here we have a white sphinx, but it has a ram's head. So we can kind of tell that that's actually a lion's body, but with a ram's head. And Moon in Taurus seeks comfort. But of course, this would be a very uncomfortable place to be. And the implication is that of stasis, that one is trapped in this position for a given period of time. Now, this is the immediate future. So you might feel like something grinds to a bit of a halt in the near future. But there are new things coming. This is just the immediate future. This is not the long term. This is an indicator that there's going to be a period of sacrifice and stasis. From your perspective, we have, it's called the Argonaut. This would be the navigator. There are unknown dangers beneath. Again, Neptunian energy, things being a bit uncertain, having to forge a path that perhaps no one has ever been on before. Is this serpent here a protector or a foe? Is the crocodile a protector or a foe? How hungry is the crocodile, right? We do have, mirroring the posture of this navigator, we have a jackal riding on a cobra. So showing the protective forces flying out ahead. This card showing up in the reverse. So again, the navigator is a card with a lot of mobility associated with it. That Neptunian energy that you have to trust your relationship to the higher power. You're going to have to put trust in this. And because this card is showing up reversed in the hopes and fears, it does indicate that you might be afraid that you're not going to be able to see the way ahead and that you won't be able to trust your relationship with your higher power. But I don't think either of those things is the case. But this can be very scary when it's staring you in the face. And I think that because that's showing up in the future, in the upright, you might be staring that right in the face. Here in the midheaven, so this is going to be the result of this, which is kind of an establishment energy, getting established. We have the contrition card in the reverse. Now, this is Plutonian energy. There is a lot of change associated with Pluto. Excuse me. And where we have this person is being humiliated. This is another card of offering, but in this case, these are offerings of things. This person has been completely dehumanized and has become a thing and is being offered to this pharaoh as tribute. Now, because this card is in the reverse, you could see that the pharaoh could represent a corporate work situation and becoming just another faceless entity that is part of that. And this card showing up reverse shows you, I think, in this particular case, and because it is the result of this, that you will not necessarily have to do that, that you will have other more self-motivated options open to you. Because the final outcome for your reading, Virgo, today is an excellent, excellent card. We have preeminence. So we have this royalty being carried by these people. You will be this person here on top. You will have people supporting you. This is the wasp scepter of power. We also have Venus energy here, right? That finance coming in right when you need it and getting fully established in one's best existence. But there is going to be something a bit uncomfortable in the intermediate period. So now I am going to do some bibliomancy, and then I had just been changing the batteries, but I need to take a bathroom break. So I'm going to end this live stream after the bibliomancy, but I will come right back and I will do a part 2, and that will be the sign of Capricorn. Hence, to fight and conquer in all your battles is not supreme excellence. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. So, if you'll give me just a moment, I will be right back. This live stream will be ending, but I will set up the next one shortly.